All right, hey, it's August 12th, bringing a weekly Lake of the Ozarks fishing report. Water conditions, water temps creeped up this last couple of weeks. We've had, some pretty warm weather here, especially these last 4 or 5 days. It's been up, close 95, 100 degrees, high humidity. And of course the nights don't cool off. So, that water temps up upper 80s. Mid to upper 80s anyways. Water color is fairly clear in most places. You've got a little colored water up some of the river arms. If you get up above, say, 45 mile marker, maybe 50 on up, it's pretty dirty. I say dirty, it's stained up pretty good. The rest of the lake's in pretty good shape as far as color wise. Pretty stable. As when we talk about color, just I'd say 3 foot visibility, 3 to 4 foot. So that's fairly clear. Current, they've been kind of up and down with the current here. They kind of really slowed it down for a while, but then they ramp it back up. Like today, I noticed for about 3-4 hours they ran 24,000 cubic foot. And then now I just looked, they're running about 2,600. So, it's probably got really hot today. And a lot of times they'll ramp it up, mid to late afternoon, just probably take care of some of the demand for electricity when it's really hot. As far as the current, the fish relating to the current, there's still, some of them relating to current, but I've really noticed a lot here. Probably the last 2.5, 3 weeks have really started to spread out. Even though with a little bit of current, a lot of them are relating more to brush piles. And a lot of that's kind of a summer deal. Usually after they shut the water down or shad movements start moving around, things like that. And it's, the fish will just kind of relocate, I guess is the best way to explain it, and they'll just set up differently, so they'll relate to brush piles. And the brush piles, they can be on points, they can be in secondary points, they can be halfway back. It really doesn't matter a whole lot when it comes to brush piles. Of course, some brush piles will hold better than others, but when they start relating to brush piles, it just seems like the fish will find brush wherever they're at, in a creek or a cove, and they'll just relate to them. They'll sit on top of them. They'll sit in the middle of them. They just relate to brush. So as far as where to fish or look for brush, just, alongside docks, you can always do that if you don't have electronics. If you do have some decent electronics, you just idle down these coves in the creeks, make a lap around them with your side scan on or down image, and just watch for brush piles, and when you find one, just slow down and just really fish it. We're fishing just the same old like 10-inch worms, either on like a shaky head, 5/16 Crockett Shaky Pro head. We're throwing 10-inch worms, just Texas rig, if it's a lot of brush. A lot of times the Texas rig will just come through it a little easier. A 5/0 hook, quarter, all the way up to a 1/2 ounce tungsten weight, depending on how deep and how much racket you want to make as you're going through that brush pile. Jigs have been really productive in the brush piles. And the things with jigs, like a Wheezy jig, a 5/8 ounce Wheezy jig's working real good for the brush. The Wheezy jig has a really stout weed guard in it, and it'll come through that brush, and you can just let it go down to the bottom of the brush, work it up them branches, kind of bump them branches, let it fall back down. Just make a lot of commotion in that brush, and it's going to crawl through there really, really nice with that weed guard. I'm just rigging like this is a green pumpkin, 5/8 Wheezy. And I'm putting a muskrat on the back, a Crockett muskrat, green pumpkin. Works real well, comes through the brush, makes a lot of commotion. But there's a lot of other trailers you want to try too when you're fishing brush, especially in the summertime. When you're getting down deep, a lot of times your big gizzard shad will get down around that brush, and you're just trying to imitate some of these big shad, maybe crappie around the brush. Crappie get around the brush. Bass love to eat crappie too. So, something like this or other trailers we'll put on there. We'll put the Swamp Bug Senior on there. We'll put a brush hog, a full-size brush hog on there. Strike King makes these Rage Tails, or the Menace. The Rage Menace. And they have a Magnum, I think it's called Magnum. Yeah, Magnum Menace, which is even bigger. A bigger profile. And these baits work really good on the jigs. They're kind of a longer. They got paddles, and they kick and move really nice. They're also good for like on the brush piles if you're not soaking your jig in the brush pile or letting it go into the brush. Sometimes you'll see the bass suspended up above the brush or right at the tip of the brush, and you're going to want to swim your jig. Let it go down to about where you think the brush piles are, and just reel that jig and just swim it right on top of that brush. Maybe let it fall down until you feel a little bit and pop it off of there. A lot of times that'll get a bite. Sometimes they're just not buried in the brush. They're just around it. So that's when, just swim a big jig around the brush. Like I said, tip it, bring it, just make it hit a branch or something. A lot of times when I'm doing that, I might switch up and throw the Crappie in a reaction jig. It's more of a structure. I call it a structure all around jig, good for swimming. The way the line tie is, got a big stout hook on it. And then if you're swimming, like I said, put like a Menace on her, something that's kicking. This is a net bait, baby pecker crawl, works real well. Anything with some kickers on it that you can swim it by that brush and kind of trigger a bite. Just try to imitate a big shad, bluegill, crappie, even a big crawfish. You just kind of got to read the fish and see what they're doing, how they're setting up on the brush or around the brush. But right now I know a lot of fish are being caught in brush. We're catching them in brush. And a lot of other guys I'm talking to are catching them in brush. Brush, you can fish brush from I'd say 6-8 foot to 30 foot right now. The night bite's been pretty good, right? I'd say from 5:30, we'll say 6:30 till dark has been a pretty good bite around the brush, or maybe fish around big condo docks with a lot of lights around it. Tend to hold a lot of fish. If you got up on the bank or up on the seawalls and they've got a lot of lights up there kind of shining out onto the water, those are good spots. Anywhere you kind of got some lights shining on the water, it tends to attract fish of all sizes. Whether it be bluegill, shad, bugs fall in there, whatever it is that creates the attraction, and then the bass are going to be in there with them. So just kind of do that. Besides being out there in the dark and being able to see, you're going to kind of want some sort of light, some sort of silhouette, so you can kind of see where you're at and what you're doing. That's the bottom baits. Like I said, you can catch them in the mornings. We've been catching them just on the same baits around brush, out points. Still some rocky, ledgy stuff. Bluff ends have still been good, But as it gets rough, and if you aren't catching them in the brush or you don't want to fish deep, there are a few fish starting to move towards the backs with some of these bigger shad. There's a lot of shad. You'll notice you get back in coves or back in creeks, there's a pretty good concentration of shad 3/4 of the way back in some of these creeks. A couple of weeks ago they were further back. They kind of dropped the water here a week or so ago a little bit, and some of them fish pulled out. But I noticed this week they allowed it to come back up. It's sitting at 659.4, I think, right now. So it's back up about where it was. So as long as that water's stable and them shad get towards the backs, you'll be able to get back in there and catch some fish. Fairly shallow. You can catch them from from 10 foot all the way up to nothing water right now. You know, those, you know, if it gets rough out, you know, want to fight the big boats, or you just want to do something different, you know, go to the backs and start flipping, you know, just a half-ounce zapper. And, you know, the color, I don't know, the color makes a whole lot. You know, I throw my favorite color, this brown purple scale, a lot when I'm flipping, and I'm just putting a muskrat on the back of it, just a green pumpkin muskrat. And I'm just throwing the original zapper with the wire hook and a half-ounce. You know, and that's, you're just gonna want to flip around. You know, you just start about 10 foot of water and just start flipping docks. Flip under them, flip around the catwalks. Just start on one side of the catwalk, flip all the way around until you maybe catch a couple fish, and then you kind of, you know, eliminate the rest of the parts of the docks as you progress on back in the creek or cove, and you'll figure out where the fish are setting up on the dock, and then you can just go to that location, whether it be the outside corner, main lake side, or in creek side. If they're setting up under the catwalks, if they're in the boat slips, you just kind of got to figure out where they're setting up on any given day, so you don't have to waste all the time fishing all the way around the dock. You know, you can just kind of pinpoint where they're at. Another bait in shallow right now is just a little square bill. This is just a little 6-inch little bluegill color. Here, you know, in the summer when the bluegill are back there spawning, you know, you can just get something that looks like a bluegill. This just looks like a little bluegill here, and just run it alongside these shallow docks. Throw all the way up to the shallow corner, and just start off just burn that thing right down the side. And a lot of times them fish are laying underneath them docks, and they'll shoot out there and grab that square bill. It's a good way of just covering a lot of water when you're not sure what the fish are doing or where they're setting up. Maybe a cloudy day, overcast day. A lot of times in the morning, you can just run baits down the side of these docks. These fish are, you know, they're set up on the outside. They haven't went up underneath the docks. You know, when the bright sun or a lot of activity on the water, you know, they'll just get buried up underneath them docks, where if it's rainy or cloudy or overcast, or like I said, early mornings, you can just go down the side of these docks and cover a lot of water. And, you know, you can catch some good fish on, like I said, on the square bills, you know, your jigs, your shaky head. We're still throwing a mag finesse worm on, you know, crappie or shaky head. And same deal, we're just flipping, you know, we throw these around brush too. You know, that shaky head, you can throw shaky head all year long down here and catch them. If you just, you know, want to keep something simple, that's probably one of the best, just keeping it simple. You know, drag it around the brush, you know, on the outsides around it. Sometimes the shaky head doesn't want to come through the brush as well as, say, like the wheezy jig or maybe a Texas rig worm or something. Sometimes tends to come through thick brush piles a little bit better. You know, it's just one of them deals. You just gotta be patient and finesse your bait through it. You know, as far as worms, like I said, that mag finesse worm, we're using it. We're using the Gary Yamamoto cut tail worm, the Berkeley power bait 10-inch worms. You know, in a variety of colors, as long as you keep it a natural color, green pumpkin, black and blue, you know, browns. Like I said, once you get down there and you're in that brush, you're just making commotion, you're moving something around down there, and that's why they're grabbing the bait. It's more about getting the bait in front of the fish as much as I think it's color. You know, I'm sure guys will say, no, you got to have this color or this color, which it's one of the confidence things. If you catch a few good fish on a certain color, just stick with that color, you know. But from what I can tell, if you get the bait in front of the fish and they're there feeding, they're going to grab it. So it's more about where you're putting the bait, you know. Let's see, crappie. Crappie's been kind of hit and miss for me, but if you do want to go out and catch crappie, you can catch them. And they're really bunched up. A lot of them are along bluffs, little bluff pockets. If you can find any kind of brush, say in 15 foot of water, there's usually a bunch of crappie, you know, bunched up around it. You know, some of your main lake docks has a lot of them under it. that you can shoot the crappie jigs underneath those docks and catch them. Some of your bridge columns, you know, you'll see along the bridge columns, for whatever reason, the crappie will group up on them in the shade and around those bridge columns. You know, you can kind of sit there if you can stand the boat traffic out there. But mainly you can find a brush pile here in the Ozarks and pretty much any cove, any creek, and once you find them, you know, you can kind of fish around a certain depth and kind of see which depth seems to be holding them. But they're so bunched up, you can kind of pretty much sit on a school of crappie right now and just pick them off. And you know, you can several baits you can just throw, like just your straight little crappie jigs, like the Bobby Garlands. You know, they're all look pretty close to the same anymore. We still throw this little swimmer by K-Tech. It's a little 3-inch swimmer. We just put on a little 1/8 ounce head and just throw it past the bait or throw it past the brush. Let it sink down and just swim that thing over the top of them, and them fish will come out and grab it. And you know, if you can stay above that brush, they'll just keep coming out and grabbing the bait, so you can catch several of them. You know, compared to if you drop it down in that brush pile, sometimes seems to spook them. But you'll catch several, and then sometimes they'll just shut down on you, and you won't catch any more. You just kind of gotta let them tell you if they're still biting or if you need to move on to another brush pile or another dock. But the crappie, they're you know, you can catch them, like I said. We're still catching them like that, but we're also catching them trolling crankbaits. You can go out there right now and troll them bandit crankbaits or whatever. Berkeley makes a little crank. There's a lot of little crankbaits, or even like those deep diving stick baits. You can run them, catch them. It really doesn't matter. It's another deal where there's a bunch of crappie schooled up and you troll through them and you're going to catch them. I've noticed a lot of white bass schooling. You'll notice those kind of out in the middle of the creeks. A lot of shad are working the middle, the center of the creeks. They do it every year. Either main lake, out over the top of the channel, or you get back in creeks and they're right in the center. And you know, all of a sudden the water will just explode with a lot of busted surface activities, and most of that's white bass, which, you know, they're fun. You can throw anything over there. You can throw chug bugs, flukes, swim a jig through it. It really don't matter. If you get something close to them, you know, you're gonna catch them. So, you know, numbers, we're still catching a lot of numbers on just the old Zoom fluke. You know, swimming jigs, swimming little jigs alongside main lake docks. You can catch plenty of fish like that. And you'll catch some good ones like that. Most of those fish are, you know, 12 inches to 16, 17 inches, more for numbers if you just want to catch a lot of numbers, or, you know, just have some activity. It's not real hard. You're just fishing main lake docks down the sides of them. You're not getting in between docks or getting way back in coves. You know, it's just kind of an easy way to just go out and fish and catch a lot of fish. Top water, there's a little top water bite in the mornings. And just kind of switch it up. Spooks, chug bugs, some buzz baits, some whopper plopper. It doesn't really matter. You're just covering water and you're going down the bank. A lot of these fish will move shallow at night and feed on either bluegill, the shad, or crawfish, whatever. And they're still up there in the morning. So you can just go down the bank with top water, and it's just opportunity feeding for them. You'll notice now, this time of year, a lot of the shallow rocks start growing moss on it. And there's a lot of real thick, dark green moss on these rocks. And them shad, you know, they love it. They'll move up, and the shad will get up shallow, and they'll really feed on that moss before that water gets turned up rough with all the boat traffic and stuff like that. So they're up there feeding, and the bass come up there and feed on the shad. So, you know, from now through, late November, there'll be a lot of moss, you know, on those rocks. And I'm sure it's once the water temp gets a certain temperature that algae and moss starts growing a lot, and that's right now. You know, that water temp's probably as warm as it's going to get. I don't see it getting any warmer, but this is perfect conditions to grow all that moss on them shallow rocks. And that, like I said, that brings them shad up there. That's what makes the topwater bite so good late in the fall until they drop that water down so much that it pulls away from that moss. But basically from right now, for several months, there'll be a decent topwater bite, really shallow, really early. So you can always run that if you're coming down just to fish. As far as anything else, there's a few tournaments. There's tournaments down here on the Ozarks. Man, every weekend there's some sort of tournament. There's I know there's a Tuesday night out of Shawnee. There's a Wednesday out of PB2. I think there's one out of Kaufman. There's one, in the evenings. Just kind of look it up. Look at the regatta permits on Missouri Water Patrol. Go to regattas, punch in the lake, punch in the dates or the month, and it'll bring up every regatta, every permit, every tournament going on, where they're at, and the contact. So if you look for a tournament to fish, you can also obviously still always go to Bass and Bob to get any information on any tournaments, any fishing, anything is going on down here. Speaking of that, Bass and Bob is putting on his Summer Sizzler, which is next Saturday and Sunday, which I believe is the 20th and 21st, I believe it is. Look that up on a regatta or look it up on Bass and Bob. Find out all the details. That's a really neat tournament. It's a 2-day tournament. Fishing's really good down here. There's not a lot going on in summer, so it's a good event to fish. Real good payback. A lot of good people be there, hanging out, talking. It's just a fun event. Unfortunately, Denise and I we're going to go on a little trip, and we won't be back until late that weekend. So we're going to miss it this year. But it's something. It's a fun deal to fish if you're looking for something in the middle of summer with several boats and some good payback. With that being said, just remember it's hot. Your fish are real sensitive this time of year, so do everything you can to keep your fish healthy in the live well. There's different methods. People have different methods that work best for them in summertime fishing, keeping fish in the live well. A lot of it, I feel, has to do with where you're catching your fish. If you're catching your fish out of 25, 30 foot, those fish are used to, more comfortable, and immaculate to water temperatures that's a lot cooler than if you're, say, flipping shallow, catching fish out of this mid-80s water temperature. It's not as important to get them fish right into some cool water as it is you're bringing them up out of cool water and then dropping them in, say it might be 65 degrees where you catch them and you bring them up and throw them in 85. That's a pretty good shock on them, so just keep that in mind. You might want to carry that ice with you, carry some Rejuvenate, put that ice in there, cool it down. You only need to cool it down 5-6 degrees to really help. Put that Rejuvenate in there. That does a couple things. It relaxes the fish, but it also takes any chemicals out of, say, the ice that may be froze in the bags. Any chlorine or any other chemicals that neutralizes that, so it'll keep them healthy. Run your live wells constant. Don't turn your live wells off. Some people like to put them on recirc, cool it down, put them on recirc like that. If you're catching them out of that deep water, cool that water down. If you're catching them out of shallow water, personally, I just put it on auto, where I'm bringing in fresh water and I'm just cycling it and keeping it aerated, constant. Just don't ever turn your aerators off in the summertime. Just try to do what you can to preserve your fish and get them back in the water as soon as possible. If you are catching them deep, check out any of the YouTube videos and learn how to fizz a fish right. There's 2 different methods. Just find which one's going to work best for you and take the time to learn that and properly fizz these fish so they're upright, and when you let them go, they go right back down or go lay on the water and get comfortable. You don't want them on top of the surface, splashing around, struggling. It's just a little more stress on the fish. So just keep all that stuff in mind. Well, that's really about it that we have for you. It's still busy down there. It is slowing down. Some schools are picking back up. Sports are starting to pick back up. So the traffic on the lake is nowhere near what it's been, say, 2 weeks ago when it was still busy. The weekends are still going to be busy. A lot of people are back in school or are back busy during the week. So they've stopped their vacation, but they'll still be coming on the weekends. So the weekends are still busy, but the fishing is really good. It's been just real steady, real consistent the last, for 3-4 weeks. You can go out and you can catch them however you want to fish on the Ozarks. I promise you, it does not matter what style you like to fish. You can catch them doing that right now. You just kind of got to experiment. Main Lake, halfway back, all the way back. Just really concentrate and follow them shad. Watch for the shad. That's really going to dictate where a lot of fish are, a little concentration. And it doesn't matter if you find them out in the main channel, out in 30 foot of water, there's going to be bass around them. If you find them in 2 foot of water, there's going to be bass around them. So just kind of concentrate on the shad and experiment with baits and lures and go out and have a good time. Be safe. Only other thing is, if you do see a big concentration of shad way back on these flats, way in the backs, you can throw this rattle style, red-eye shad, rattle traps, and just fan cast across them, and you'll catch a lot of fish, a lot of smaller ones, but every once in a while, one of the big old 4-pounders get back there and chase some shad around. So that's another little easy bait to throw just in the backs. If you see shad flipping around, you see the bass busting on them. So, when we get back from the trip, we'll bring you back up to date what's going on. So until then, be safe down here at the lake. Enjoy yourself, and we'll see you later.